Howdy folks. So another kind of odd thing for this channel, but I could not pass up the opportunity to open this on camera. So this is an Acer AirKey wireless keyboard, but what makes this kind of interesting is the fact that it is from 1998 and it is still sealed in plastic. You can tell that it's from 1998 because of the old people stock photo and the space, and you know, it screams 90s, but there's a copyright year on here as well. This is a wireless keyboard, but not an RF wireless keyboard. It's infrared. So it uses the same technology as your TV remote, where you have to aim this at the receiver in order to transmit via line of sight. And so this, it's been sealed here for 23 years, and that includes the batteries that it came with. We'll see what state those are in. And I've been in the market for one of these kind of keyboards with integrated mouse, that's wireless for a home theater PC. So it'd be really interesting to see how well this works, and if it works well, I may actually use it. So yeah, plug and play, MS-DOS, Windows 95, all pretty straightforward there. Just showing what it looks like. That's probably what the receiver looks like. And as far as the specs go, basically, as long as you have a 386, you can use this. It's probably a PS2 native device because they specify it comes with an AT adapter and RS-232 adapter as well. So I suspect it's just a PS2 device, which explains why it probably just plugs and plays, because there's no real driver necessary for it. And so yeah, this is made by Acer, and it is sealed. So it's got some tears, unfortunately, in the plastic, but it's sealed on this end, and it's sealed on this end. So we're going to be opening this for the first time. So let's get it open. Okay, so opening this up, we'll just do this one-handed. So this could get a little difficult here. There we go. Okay, we've broken the seal. So I have a 50-50 shot of opening this from the right side. So before we open it up, this is the details if anyone is interested. So we will open it up here, and is that the bottom? Nope. No. Okay. It looks like it's backwards, but I'm going to trust that this is the correct way to open it. Yep, it looks like it is. And let me use two hands for this. Okay, so this is out of the box here. It's just got some foam, and there's our keyboard, and that would be our receiver, and this is our PS2 to RS-232 adapter. So yes, it does have PS2 on the end of the end of the receiver here. So it looks like the receiver has two PS2 connectors on it. So okay, so one is for the keyboard and the other would be for the mouse. Okay, so this was one of the things I was interested in, was how they're getting both keyboard and mouse through one PS2, and the answer is they're not. They're just using both connectors. So this would work on a system that has two PS2 ports, but if you have a modern system that has one of those mouse keyboard combo ports, you would only be able to use one of the two functions with this, unless you got like a USB to PS2 breakout cable, because they almost always have two on it. So that's a caveat if you want to try and use this in the year 2021. So it's an interesting looking receiver here, and it looks like it's got little nodules here for feet. So I assume it stands this way. That way it can probably see up and down, so that way you can change your height, but you could probably put it on its side as well. So we'll have to figure that out. And then we've got the keyboard itself here, and oh, there we go. Okay, so we've got our some documentation, and oh boy, those Duracells, they expired quite a while ago. So yikes. So we've got some 3M, looks like adhesive foam, or no, that's Velcro. So I've got some Velcro to probably stick the receiver down with. This would be our PS2 to AT style keyboard connector for your really old systems. And then we've got our guide here. So you can see this is, yeah, that's from the batteries. Yeah, that's from the batteries. When I saw this, I thought, oh, is it like some seal of approval? Nope, it's it's all just corroded to hell. That's actually kind of impressive. I don't think I've ever seen that level of corrosion on paper before. I don't know how well this is going to come across on camera, but that's 3D. That's like 3D crystals on paper there. So that's pretty impressive. I really do want to get a multimeter and just check what voltage those are, but I know it's 0. But anyway, let me try and separate these because it seems that all the paper is stuck together because it's bled through. All the battery juice has bled through and it's stuck the entire manual all together. So I'll have to take a look at that separately. And then we've got the keyboard, and I'm glad that the keyboard was in a plastic bag because it has no damage whatsoever from those batteries. So I'm very happy about that. And let's see what we got on the back here. There's our model revision 1.5, so they've been through quite a bit on this. Acer peripherals, blah, blah, blah. Everything looks fine. Interestingly, it has an FCC ID. I guess that makes sense. Yeah, it doesn't need to emit any RF to require FCC. So we've got little cheap little feet here, but it's got some rubber feet on the bottom, which I think is actually pretty nice. Battery door looks pretty straightforward. And this would be our IR emitter. So again, I suspect there's more than one LED in here. There's probably, I'd say at least 3. There's probably one facing forward and then one facing off to the side. So, you don't have to be perfectly square with the receiver for it. That's my best guess. And so the keyboard is, it's okay. Trust me, I felt worse keyboards than this. It's kind of short travel. If you know what a laptop keyboard from the 90s feels like a Toshiba Satellite or something like that, that is the kind of keyboard feel you get. It's like a 1990s laptop keyboard. So it's got that kind of travel. In fact, I suspect this is probably a keyboard membrane out of a laptop because it doesn't have the numpad and stuff like that. I would not be surprised if that's where this keyboard membrane is from. And then as far as the buttons for the mouse go, oh, those are weird. Those are like micro switches almost. I think those actually are micro switches. I think they have real micro switches from like a regular desktop mouse behind those buttons. That's actually pretty nice. I was not expecting. I thought those would just be, shitty little rubber membranes or maybe little tactile dome switches. But no, those are real micro switches. That's impressive. And then over here, so how does this work? Is this a... So this just looks like a, is it basically a D-pad? I expected something almost like the nipple mouse where you move it, but I don't know. It doesn't. It definitely just seems to be a piece of rubber that you could probably press on some direction. This will be interesting to see how this works. This is probably going to suck. Just from feeling this, I don't think there's going to be a lot of control to the mouse speed. I think getting precision clicking with this is going to be a challenge, which honestly, this is probably going to let the whole thing down because the mouse seems fine and the keyboard seems perfectly fine. And there doesn't appear to be any LEDs on the keyboard of any kind letting you know that it's on. And there's also no caps lock or num. There isn't really a num lock. But there's buttons for it, but there's no lights for it. And I suspect the reason for that is, it's going to be to do with battery savings. But the one thing that a lot of people may not know is that caps lock, num lock, and scroll lock, those LEDs on your keyboard, those are not actually tied to the keyboard's buttons. So when you press like caps lock, for example, your keyboard sends the key code for caps lock to the computer, and then the computer sends turn the caps lock LED on back to the keyboard, and the keyboard turns the light on. So the keyboard is not responsible for turning those lights on and off. It's the computer that does that. And that's why on Linux you can actually make those LEDs do whatever you want. You can tie them to like network status and CPU activity and all sorts of stuff with LED triggers. They're completely decoupled from the buttons. That's how you can have multiple keyboards plugged in, and if you press caps lock on one, they'll light up on all of them. And so the reason they've omitted the lights, other than power savings, is that I suspect this is a unidirectional link. This just has a transmitter, and the receiver is just a receiver. And so in order for it to turn the lights on and off, it would have to be able to receive from here and transmit from here. and I suspect that that would have added extra cost, extra complexity, and also the circuitry to do receive would have been very power hungry. So that's why they've omitted that from this design. So yeah, I guess the next thing would be to get a computer which has two PS2 ports, plug this in, get some real batteries that are not these ones, and I'll try and unstick the manual pages, and we'll see if we can learn anything else interesting. I think you can see how crunchy this manual is going to be. So I've managed to separate the manual as best I could. Unfortunately, some parts are too far gone, but it's good enough for us to get a feel for what's going on here. Starts out with just a warning about using it in sunlight and stuff, and anyone who lived in the 90s, would remember, I remember trying to sync my Palm Pilot with my laptop using infrared, and how much of an absolute bitch it was to get the two to, be able to communicate, and, light was always a problem. So we'll see how susceptible this is to that, given that it's only single direction communication. And yeah, it basically just says, plug everything in, and it shows using the RS-232 for the mouse, and so that makes sense if you've got a computer that only has an AT-style keyboard. Obviously, you're not going to have PS2, so you're not going to have a way to plug the mouse in, so that makes sense why they have both adapters. And it's all pretty straightforward. It also has this note here, which shows the mouse connection only for this XX20i model, so I'm probably right with that, that the 10i models didn't have the mouse, but they were just the keyboard, so that seems reasonable. And yeah, it just says plug it in, and it seems to show that this mouse pad thing is pressure sensitive. They say if you push harder, it moves faster. So we'll see how that works. I would like to open this if possible. I think it's just screws, so I should be able to take a look at how they actually made that, depending on how well it works, whether we need to take it apart or not. Yeah, and the rest of this is pretty straightforward. It's like use function keys, it's a laptop, blah, blah, blah. They claim 20 feet line of sight and plus or minus 30 degrees on that, so time to plug it in. So for those who love battery carnage, what I find really interesting about it is obviously they blew out on the negatives, which is where you expect because that's where the seal is. But this battery blew out on the positive as well, which you don't see that, And then this one's intact, but this one blew out on the positive. Anyway, so I got my multimeter out, and this one, the one that blew it on both sides, it's basically dead. But this battery, it's got 0.4 volts on it. Yeah, so it actually has a measurable voltage after I scraped away enough of the crusties to make a contact with the negative. But yeah, it is still technically a cell, although good luck trying to pull any more than probably a couple microamps out of that. I wonder what the date on these is, what their best before date is. I really don't want to touch them. Oh, there we go. March 2004. There we go. Wonderful. So there you go. That's delicious. Delicious. Yum. So I've just got my home theater PC here, and I've just got the keyboard and mouse connected, and it goes all the way over here to the receiver. And the receiver, I've just pointed it like this. It actually seems to be pretty good as far as the angles go. I haven't been able to really see any problem with any orientation, so even with it at kind of an angle like this, it seems to work just fine. And the other thing that I noticed when I put batteries in it, there's no actual on-off switch on this anywhere. So as long as batteries are in it, it is just sort of on. And I'm wondering if they've implemented this the same way that your TV remote works, where it actually doesn't, effectively doesn't have power until you press a key down. I think that would work for the keyboard and the mouse buttons, but I don't think it would work for this too well. So I may actually get a multimeter and see what the current draw of this is. We'll see how much power this thing uses in all the different modes. The other thing from testing that I noticed is these buttons are not the way you'd expect. The bottom one is, I thought, the top one would be left click, bottom one would be right click. I know that they're a little bit offset, so this is actually left click, this is right click, which seems, I guess it seems a little odd to me, but maybe I'm just weird, but that's, I don't know, I intuitively click to this one first instead of this one, just holding it like that, but no, it is actually left is on the left, right's on the right. And it works, so that's pretty great. And I'll try and get some shots of my TV, and you can see how the mouse works, because the mouse is interesting. So sorry for the lack of screen capture. It's not on this machine, and I'm not going to install it. So I've just got black cursor on a white background here, so it should be pretty easy to see how this behaves. The keyboard works as a keyboard. That's not really the interesting part. The interesting part, of course, is the weird little mouse on it. And so it does have inbuilt pressure sensitivity. So if you press it lightly, it moves slowly, and if you press it harder, it moves faster. And it appears to have the 4 cardinal directions, and then if you press in between, it's gonna combine the 2 speeds and give you other directions. And so from that perspective, it is a usable mouse. But the thing is, if you try to use it like a nipple mouse, where you put your finger on it and you try to slide, that doesn't really work too well. And even trying to just sort of roll your finger around it doesn't work too well. You really do have to press on the sides of it to get it to go in the right direction. And every once in a while, you'll be pressing even hard, and it won't go, and you'll have to kind of stop pressing and then press again, and then it'll go. But it's serviceable, and I'm sure for '98 this was perfectly acceptable. And to be honest, it's better than some of the sort of joystick mice that I have used. Like I have one that's a Bluetooth one for my phone, and I use it like a remote camera shutter, and it has a similar thing, but it actually has like a movable joystick, and it sucks way harder than this. So they clearly could have done worse with this, and the buttons work perfectly fine. They're very nice and clicky and responsive, and so everything looks good there, and got context menus and all that stuff. So it's totally serviceable, and I wonder if this camera will pick up on the IR coming out of this. It doesn't appear to. No, it doesn't look like this camera can see the IR coming out of it. What's also interesting is that this is facing the opposite direction, and it's still working. So that's interesting. So it must be just reflecting off of maybe the camera lens, the white wall behind me. But yeah, this camera can't pick it up. I'm going to see. Well, we just had a power outage, so wonderful. Great. Will the TV turn back on? Yes. And that is why I have a supercapacitor-backed UPS on this PC, because this PC just got held up by that supercapacitor UPS that I built. So even though it can only hold stuff up for a few seconds, it's good enough for things like that. That was not scripted. I'm gonna have to go turn my overhead lights back on again, but yeah, unfortunately, there's no IR that can be seen here. I'll see if I can get a shot of it with a better camera. So, in case you were wondering about the current draw, so I've got the current probes in here, and when you're not pressing a key, it does actually have 0 current draw. So I think this does work exactly like a TV remote, in which case it really has no standby current, and then only when you push a key does the current go up to about 6 milliamps, 6 or 7 milliamps, which I don't think I'm going to be able to demonstrate because I'm using all of my limbs here to try and support these probes, because I've got a little piece of paper in between the battery terminals so that I can break the circuit and get my ammeter in there. So yeah, it's about 6 or 7 milliamps while transmitting, and 0 when not transmitting. So it doesn't need a power switch, which is, I guess, one pretty neat advantage to this over other things. So anyway, I think with that's going to wrap up this video. I think I've shown everything that I need to show about this, and yeah, it's totally serviceable in the year 2021. Yeah, the mouse leaves something to be desired, but I think I'm actually going to use this in my home theater PC for a little bit. And if there's any developments, I'll let you know. But other than that, thanks for watching.